fire in Flower Bluff. I don't know if you could see that's the smoke. There's the emergency fire trucks. You could see some flames coming out of the roof there. And this is off of Admiral Street. I'll try and show you a little bit. Oh, here comes another fire truck. If the local media has no one on scene and you want to take the clip, you have permission to to use the video. Attributed to CC Outreach 87. But this is Mike. My friend lives right down there. Mike, the artist. And it was interesting because I was coming down Yorktown Road to Laguna Shores in Flower Bluff. I normally don't go that route, but I went to my daughter's house. And then the fire truck passed me up way down Laguna Shores, and a lot of times it's a brush fire. But I noticed as I was getting closer to SPID, I saw, it was a big fire, and sure enough, it was a house fire, so that's right over there. And I'll just make a few comments being here. Of course, the smell sounds familiar to me, and being out during the day and seeing the fire trucks, that was what I did 25 years, so it's been a while since I've been at a structure fire, smelling the smoke, seeing the trucks. I'll do a few comments being I got it on. I wasn't going to make one today, but I figured I'll catch that for you. The big news, the Trump thing, and the widow. Trump made a phone call to the widow of one of the, I believe one of the guys who died in Niger, in Africa. There were 4, I mentioned that. I believe it was the widow he called, and that was the top news last night. And it was portrayed as Trump was very insulting, and I listened or saw the text of what he said. But for them to have drugged that in like that, maybe you say, John, you're a liberal. Yes, but because I understand that. What he said was, it's the way you portray it. He said, they all sign up for stuff like that. Firemen, cops. Not meaning, John Kelly, who they also tried to embroil. They said Obama didn't call John Kelly when his son died. And I believe that's probably correct. He didn't. And I don't want to debate how many presidents called him. But the statement of Trump was basically, he joined up for this. Meaning he joined up, he knew he would put his life at risk. Firemen, cops, whatever. But it's still sad and tragic, and when it happens, okay. Supposedly there was a black Democratic Congress lady that was there at the time, who they already have the whole thing that he's so mentally unstable that he should be removed. There's an outrage now. I believe the father of the man who died said it was a cordial call. And John Kelly himself said, look, it was fine. Nothing was inappropriate. But you can take the text of that statement and you can play it like, well, they joined up for that, so he's dead, he's dead. You could spin it like that. And then it can become the national news story. And then it becomes a debate now. Any future conversations he has with families of people who died. And now that's going to be brought in. Regardless of your view, I understand Trump is not. I understand. He says things wrong, and others that he has said that was real wrong. But they portrayed it because that Democratic Congress lady said he's insane. So, remember the death penalty case I talked about recently? That girl, Tammy, she was upset because a few years ago when they were first going to put her brother to death, she told somebody that was a preacher, and she said, my brother's going to be put to death. And she said that he laughed, and it upset her. And that was something that was done inappropriately because, maybe there was something else happening at that time. But that's how the media is actually portraying it. with Trump, that he called and said, well, that's what he signed up for. Don't be mourning over it. So anyway, I'll give you this little update. Like I said, I didn't plan on doing a rollout. I printed a couple of my little books from my friend Furman. I'll mention this real quick. I spent the whole day with Furman. I might go see him in a little while. And when he was in prison, Furman came to know Lord. And he was talking, he's really like myself. He believes that the prosperity gospel and the money gospel is really distorted scripture. As a matter of fact, today I think I posted the link because the Kings 13 study, I wound up discussing it. And he said, John, all those guys got caught up into it, and he mentioned the names of the preachers. And he said, and at first I was caught up into it too, but then as I kept studying the Word, I realized that the movement, and they pumped the jails and prisons with their books, and he mentioned the various famous preachers who taught that message. Some have passed away, some are alive. And he said, but then I came to realize through the Word of God that that message was distorted. So I printed him, because he doesn't get online. I printed him my little book, which I gave the link to on today's post, House of Prayer Den of These. I made 2 copies, so I'll give one to Furman in a little while. Also on the addiction recovery, I printed him some. But I found it interesting because all of that he learned through the fellowship, the church in prison. And Furman told me, John, when I get out of prison, and he mentioned the churches that he visited here in Corpus Christi. I know those churches. I've been to all those churches, and I'm familiar with them. And he said, the biggest letdown for me, John, is when I got out of prison. He said, and I visited the churches. He said it was like it was fake compared to the church I had when I was in prison. And I had other friends of mine tell me, I used to write my friends when they went to do prison time. And I'd write them and keep in touch with all of them. I saw that his ministry at Firehouse, I used to write those letters during lunchtime and stuff. And some of the guys would tell me, David Buenteo used to say, man, we got a strong fellowship in this particular one I'm at. Then later he might say, oh, this one is not that great. But that was real interesting to see how the experience, because in prison they're like a brotherhood, okay? So I got into a little bit of what the church is and the nature of the church. I kind of was teaching a little bit to Furman. I said, because what you miss, it's not that you're institutionalized. And I was explaining that to some people. I said, some guys are institutionalized. When they get out, they miss the structure of being in prison. And I think some of them, I'll walk back to the car, I think some of them make the mistake, and then they wind up going back to prison. I said, but some of the guys in these particular cases, what they miss is the fellowship. Because in the prison, these were new seekers of God that find God, the little fellowship of guys in prison that come to know the Lord. And they're living together. They're there 24/7, helping the new converts out. I remember Jimmy D, my car's right here. Jimmy D told me one time when he got out, I haven't seen him in about a month, but he said, man, John, there was this Mexican brother, all tattooed up. It's in the county jail, because he did some time in the county. And I think he said the Mexican guy's name was Sam. He was a short guy, and Jimmy told me that Sam would tell him, shut up and just listen, because Jimmy likes to talk. He said, but John, that guy was in the occult, and he was in everything, and then he came to know God, John. And he really knew. He was teaching me. That was an interesting testimony. So this would be called House Fire, Structure Fire, and we'll see what else we do. God bless everybody.